Hey guys, Casual here. Now, I'm assuming you guys are all here to delete bosses and push through endgame at blazing fast speeds. Well, I have the build for you. What you're looking at here is my beginner-friendly endgame Spiritborn build. This is one of those builds that sticks with you as you progress through the endgame and grows even more powerful as you keep playing it. This build takes inspiration from many other content creators, such as Nick2's Quill Volley build, Goblin Inc.'s Crushing Hands build, as well as many others. I've taken the best out of all of these builds and tried to make it as beginner friendly as I could possibly make it. There's 3 versions of this build. The current version that I'm running, the beginner friendly version, and the Crushing Hands version. Yes, this build is very much plug and play. You can use whatever you want and most likely it'll work. With this build, you'll be able to do all endgame content and even push high pit tiers to show off to your friends if you want. And without further ado, let's get right into my version of the build. And welcome to my version of the build. As you can see from the get-go, my masterworking is not complete. That is because there's no need to min-max for this build. You can hit trillions of damage and you don't have to min-max. Let's start off with our abilities. We have 1 point into Thunder Spike and another point into Enhanced Thunder Spike. We want as many points into Quill Volley as possible, or if you're trying to do the Crushing Hands version, you want as many points into Crushing Hand as possible. Then you want to tree up to advantageous Quill Volley. You want 3 ranks into Vigorous, 3 ranks into Vigorous, another 3 into Balanced Exertion, and another 3 into Follow Through. Then 1 point into Vortex and tree up to Measured Vortex. 3 ranks into Mirage. Actually, 1 point into Mirage, my fault. 3 points into Unrestrained Power, 1 point into Focal Point, and 3 points into Apex. Next up, we have our Ravager. We want 1 point into Ravager and scale down to Measured Ravager. Then we have 1 point into Endurance and 3 points into Perseverance. We have 1 point into Patient Guard, and we have our 1 point into Armored Hide and tree up to Reinforced Armor Hide. Next up, we have Counterattack and tree up to Reinforced Counterattack. Next up is Scourge, and we go for Reinforced Scourge. I know a lot of people do Adaptable, but I like doing Reinforced. We want as many points into Resilient as we can possibly get, but that's not necessary. You can also do Resolve as well. I just personally like doing Resilient. Then we have 3 ranks into Brilliance, another 3 into Potent, and another 3 into Furnace. Then we have 3 points into Resolution, another 3 into Spiritual Attunement, and another 3 into Supremacy. Then we have our 1 point into our Hunter, and tree to Exalted Hunter. Then, of course, for all 3 of these, you want Prodigy Tempo. Next up, we'll go through our Spirit Hole, and here's where a lot of changes come in. So, if you're doing my version of the build, the one I'm currently using, there's multiple ways you can do this. You can do Jaguar, which is what I'm doing right now. You can also do Jaguar Eagle, and you can also do Jaguar Gorilla. I usually switch between Jaguar and Jaguar Gorilla, depending on how I'm feeling on the day, how my damage is, and how locked in I'm trying to be. But you can test all of them out. I personally like Jaguar, and I like Jaguar Gorilla. Next up, we'll go to our Paragon board. This is where a lot of our increased damage is going to come in. For our Paragon board, throughout all three builds, only one node is going to change, and that's about it. Everything else will stay the same. So for our starting, we want to get Spirit and get as many points into Dexterity as we can for our increased critical strike damage. Next up, we have our Fulminate, including with our Viscous Shield. So this will increase our lightning damage, which Quill Volley does have lightning in it. So we want to get quite a few points into our lightning damage, which is our intelligence. And Viscous Shield. We do need Viscous Shield for this build because it's broken. Next up, we'll go to our Menagerist mixed with our Sapping. So our Sapping will increase our vigor and increase our damage every time we cast a skill, any of these 3 times, and we'll get 30% extra damage. And with our Menagerist, we get 10% increase incarnate damage, and we mostly use Menagerist for the maximum resource, with 15 plus maximum resource and another 8 maximum resource to get us over that 275 vigor cap, which we want for the build, but you don't need it. It's just better if you have it. Higher damage numbers, but you don't need it if you don't have the resources to get it. Next up, we have our Talon, and we want to get Talon into our Convergence Paragon board. So we have our Talon, and we want as many points into Dexterity as we can with our Talon because it will increase our Quill Volley damage. To note, if you're trying to do the Crushing Hands build, you would swap Talon out with Headhunter. That's the only difference between the build. Next up, we have our last Paragon board. We want to slot in Colossal with Revealing. These are my Paragon nodes. You can mix and match these Paragon nodes if you want. These are what I got to 1 trillion damage with. But if you want to use other glyphs such as Headhunter, such as Hubris, Ritual if you want to do Mystic Circles, or Outmatch, you can go ahead and try those out. But these are my glyphs that I like the most. So with this Paragon board, Revealing, so every time we knock someone down, we gain crowd control damage. And with our Colossal node, every time we cast a Gorilla skill, we will deal increased damage. And plus, we use this for the 2% increased damage per stack of Resolve. So this comes in play if you want to use the Jaguar Gorilla Spirit, because you get the 2 extra Resolve, so you'll stack up to however much you want. Next up, we'll take a look at our weapons and armor. So for our helmet, we want, preferably we want a GA into maximum life and a GA into maximum resource, but as long as you have maximum life in the helmet, you'll be fine. We want to slot in barrier generation and resilient. You can, instead of resilient, you can also slot in we want to slot in barrier generation and resilient, and instead of resilient, we can slot in resolve stacks. Next up, for my personal build, we use Shroud of False Death. This will increase our all stats by 328, which will get us to have all of our rare nodes, which will further increase our damage as much as possible. But if you don't have Shroud of False Death, or you're doing the beginner build, you can just use the apprehension aspect. So the apprehension and the binding more aspect play off of each other. So you get a total of 55% damage increase every time you attack an enemy. And for our armor, we want GA into maximum life, of course. All of our armor, we preferably want GA into maximum life, but as long as you have armor, or not armor, as long as you have maximum life, you'll be fine. So we want our +2 into resilience or our +2 resolve stacks, and we want a chance to freeze because freezing also slows the enemy. So you get the fear stacks and you get the damage percentage. Next up, a lot of people use Vampiric's Curse, but I like to use Soothslayers because every time we cast an Incarnate spell, everything will be vulnerable, and killing a vulnerable enemy echoes 45% of the killing blow damage to another enemy, and so on and so forth. So this will increase our damage by a lot. Here we want as many ranks into Quill Volley or Crushing Hands as we possibly can. It just depends on what build you're going for. If you want Quill Volley, get as much as Quill Volley as you can possibly can. And if you want Crushing Hands, get as much as Crushing Hands as you possibly can. The tempers don't change. You want barrier generation and overpower damage. The more barrier generation we have, the higher our damage will be. Next up, we have our legendary pants. We want the interdiction aspect on it, so every time we gain block chance per resolve stack, and the amount of block chance we have, our damage increases. So we want our +3 into resolve stacks, or our +3 or 2 into resilient. This will increase our damage by a lot. The more health you have, the more damage you will be doing. So the more resolve stacks you have, or the more resilient stacks you have, the more damage you'll be doing. Again, maximum life is the most important thing throughout all three of these builds. As long as you have maximum life, you'll be fine. Next up, you have your duelist treads. So we want preferably we want our GA into maximum life once again. And next up, we want to GA movement speed. And I have vortex size on it because I like to run vortex. You can also do counterattack charges if you want for your temper, but I just like running vortex size. I also tempered movement speed because what else would you temper? And moving on, for a weapon, all three of these will use Radaka Peleke. GA into maximum resource if possible, and get a higher percentage as you possibly can. Next up, we have our Banished Lord's Talisman. All three of these builds will use this. Like I said, GA maximum life, many ranks into core skills as you possibly can. Higher percentage, the better. Once again, Ring of the Midnight Sun. This will stay throughout all these builds. Preferably we want ranks into Mirage or Dexterity. And lastly, we want our Redirected Force Ring. Again, we want maximum life, or with our ring, we want our resource cost reduction. Our resource cost reduction improves our scaling for Radaka Peleke. Don't ask me how that works. I really don't know. I don't even know if that's intended or not, but that's how that works. We get more damage on our Radaka Peleke based on our resource cost reduction. So if you have a high resource cost reduction, you'll be doing more damage. Don't ask me how that works. And for our mercenaries, we want Verena for our reinforcement. I like to play it on the Hunter, and we have Bloodthirst. Bloodthirst we most definitely want because we get increased attack speed. which will trigger our overpowers much more frequently. For your hired mercenary, it can literally be anyone. I like a lot of people use Rahir. I personally like to use Subo because you get boss summoning caches. That's about it. Before Subo, I didn't run a mercenary. I just ran Vayran as a reinforcement. Next up, we have our gems and our runes. So we want, for our armor, we want 4 gems of barrier generation, because the more barrier generation we have more damage. For our first set of runes, we want Pocket K. This will work across all 3 builds. So spending 300% of our maximum resource, so getting our overpower 3 times, because Radakapaleke, every time we cast Radakapaleke, it uses all of our energy, then we get that energy back as we keep attacking, then it'll go away again. The more attack speed you have, the faster you get it. So doing this 3 times in a row will get you Earthen Bulwark, which is a 3-second immunity barrier, which can stack over time as you keep attacking. Then, for our last, we want our Zol Zal. So invoking a skill from another class, which is Earthen Bulwark. So we cast it 2 times, which is fairly fast. We gain 20% of our maximum life, which will therefore increase our damage even further. Next up, for our jewelry, we want resistances to all elements as we can possibly get. We don't want armor because we have Earthen Bulwark all the time. If you can't manage to get Earthen Bulwark all the time, don't worry about it, just stack armor. Once you are able to get Earthen Bulwark all the time, you can take away your armor and put in resistances. As you can see, I have 0 armor. I'm in World Tier 4, I have 0 armor, and I'm able to clear pit 115, 120 without any problem with no armor. So armor, really not that important unless you want to push that 140 to 150 pit tier. Then go ahead, stack your armor. For our beginner build, we most definitely want to stack armor a little bit, because normally you won't be in World Tier 4 if you're a beginner. You'll most likely be in World Tier 1, 2, or 3. So you want to stack armor just a little bit for your survival, getting used to the build, having those nuances of, oh, I should have casted this at this area. So just stacking armor for a little bit for our beginner build will go a long way. Next up, for our unique items, Radakapaleke, Banisher's Talisman, and Ring of the Midnight Sun. So Radakapaleke and Banisher's Talisman will drop at Duriel or in Dariel, or you can just find it in the wild. These are really easy to get. You can even trade for them because there's so many in the market currently that you can get a pretty decent one for pretty cheap. Ring of the Midnight Sun, same deal. Doesn't drop at a Duriel or in Dariel though. It drops at Grigor. So you go to Pendant Hall, you kill the boss, and hope for this to drop. Or, like I said, very overflooded in the market right now, so you can grab it for a pretty low price. Other than that, guys, that's the build. I'll leave you with the background footage if there is some. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let me know how you feel about this build. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace. Love you. See ya.